I feel as a modern day woman, I'm very, very confused. I'm often caught between crossfires of hypergamy, independence, of wanting a provider, but also wanting the power that my lineage was robbed of for centuries. Hi, Janard here. I have a lot to share today. Mostly something that I wrote about being a modern day woman, and also I want to extract the akashic reasons for why femininity has risen to the extent that it has in relation to the patriarchal structures which we see evaporation of. It's really such a catch-22, and it's not that the level of submission or subservience does not exist. It's just what we are receiving does not even activate that to begin with. Now, needless to say, I feel like it's not random or incidental that this is what's transpiring, and we're all observing this actively in romantic connections and just relations between men and women in general. I feel like this is just power-based narratives, and we all need to take a step back and extract what's really going on right now. So, femininity to me right now is associated with a level of confusion. So, feminine energy is naturally non-linear. It is non-linear, just like our cycles, our menstrual cycles and the cycles of the moon. It is non-linear. So, intuition, cycles, emotion, subtle perception, and multiplicity is associated with femininity. Masculine energy is associated with logic, direction, linearity, control, and singular focus. Patriarchal systems, economic, legal, religious, are built on linear logic. Anything cyclical or intuitive gets labeled as chaotic, irrational, confusing, or just rebellion, really. I feel like femininity cannot be controlled through such a framework, which is why it's always been demonized for centuries. So confusion is not disorder, it's depth that is just judged by a system that was created to help you understand things, but the system cannot be applied. You can't understand confusion through structure. That's not how it works. So we as the feminine perceive layers, not answers. Spiritually, we as women perceive emotional undercurrents, energetic dynamics, contradictions existing all at once, simultaneously. A woman can hold I love you and I don't want you without internal collapse. The linear systems that look like inconsistency to spirituality, it's integration. And that's exactly what this reality depends on, integration of various fractals. Now, the fractals that are currently in place, or that have been in place for centuries, even prior to my arrival, your arrival, however old you may be watching this, in human years, of course. These structures were built on fractals that are not consistent with the evolution of the earth nor the cycles. And that's the reason why we're seeing demise in every way, shape, and form. So, confusion is merely complex consciousness. So to really interpret this in all of us, we need to take the feminine approach and really use the discernment. The logic from structure will never be able to deduce confusion, whether it's spiritual, mental, psychological. And I feel like therapy is the worst tool to use to interpret this level of confusion. And I've seen it literally in my own reality. When I have gone for therapy, I found that I was misdiagnosed often and, given labels, and identifying with labels is never really the answer in this existence. Needless to say, I also feel like therapy is really just interacting with someone who has a storage unit of projections. So let's say, for example, you're seeing 10 people back to back. So you're compartmentalizing that, and then the next person receives the next projection, and the following person after that receives the following projection. I feel like it's just compilations of projections. In other words, I find therapists or psychiatrists, I find that they often project their bias and they can never really understand your position. And this is from my experience of interpreting my mental confusion and my mental fog in my life. And I haven't found therapy to be really useful in any capacity because it's really just spiritual confusion. So, what's going on in most of us is just spiritual confusion. We're trying to assimilate into a system that cannot integrate us anymore. Our souls are too evolved to integrate into a system that was designed to condense us. But because of the level of expansion that we're experiencing right now on this earth and on this planet, it simply cannot contain us, which is why a lot of us do not want to comply to the conventional theatrics of the structure at play. So, my next point is why women gaining power correlates with not wanting men. So, this is quite an uncomfortable conversation, and it's really a conflation of desire versus necessity. So, historically, women needed men for survival, social standing, protection, and legitimacy. So, when a woman gains financial autonomy, psychological clarity, sexual self-knowledge, and spiritual grounding, men move from necessity to choice. And a choice exposes a hard truth. A lot of relationships were never based on mutual desire. They were based on dependency and control. Power often reveals incompatibility, is my next point. So, spiritual growth sharpens discernment, like I mentioned earlier. As women gain power, they often gain and see emotional immaturity more clearly and refuse unconscious dynamics. So, in other words, the confusion or the spiritual confusion that cannot be integrated into an expansive reality. So you and I might resonate on a surface level, but we cannot integrate spiritually because of the lack of evolution that you've experienced internally. And that's only because you followed a structure religiously your entire life, whereas someone that's more free-flowing and dynamic has evolved at a much more rapid pace, because anyone that's following a structural way of life has often sat on their reality for a long period of time to sustain the mechanism at play. And that means rejection of anything that's unfamiliar or anything that detests or contradicts the patterned way of living. Now, I proceed by saying that prior, generations ago, relationships that require self-erasure were often the relationships that were sustained because of the structure or the structural way of life that I just mentioned. So I wouldn't say right now it's that we hate men, but I think it's just withdrawing from anything that's misaligned. I feel like women are more naturally inclined to sort of follow the rhythm of the earth. So spiritual evolution is far more easier for people like us. And power doesn't make women anti-men. It makes them anti-diminishment. So the next part is, because the structure was always followed, men were never taught to meet women at this level of spiritual power. So they were taught to be providers, not partners, assertive, but not emotionally fluent, dominant, but not introspective. When women outgrow these old roles, men experience rejection, and society reframes women as cold, confused, damaged, or traumatized. But spiritually, what is happening is that the dynamic is dying. It is dying. So the spiritual reason for the fact that this narrative exists is control fears consciousness. And spiritually awakened women threaten systems that rely on obedience, guilt, and self-doubt. So narratives arise like women are emotional, women don't know what they want, women become lonely when empowered, when really these narratives are containment strategies and not truth. So labeling power as confusion discourages women from trusting themselves. So what is actually happening spiritually right now? So it's women wanting congruence, or should I say conscious congruence, and refusing asymmetry, and no longer negotiating their soul for companionship. So the spiritual shift is from attachment to alignment. And I feel like many men have not crossed that bridge yet. So the deeper truth behind this is, when a woman says she doesn't want men, what she means is, I don't want the version of masculinity that requires me to shrink. Spiritual femininity is not confused, it's awake. And awakening always looks like threatening the systems built on sleep. So to really unpack this, we'd have to actually understand the Akashic progression of human existence. So if you don't know, the Akashic records is basically the storage unit of the evolution of our life cycles and also our individual cycles. Across many lifetimes, feminine souls accumulated karma from being silenced, being owned, being spiritually powerful but socially powerless, being punished for intuition, sexuality, and leadership. And I would say in the Akashic field, suppressed expression creates future life polarity. And in this lifetime, you may require clarity, which may initially feel like rejection. Boundaries feel like coldness, and sovereignty feel like detachment. So we are basically breaking collective vows as women, and the broken karmic vows are the vows of obedience, service to men, gods, families, chastity, silence, and sacrifice. They were taken in priestess lifetimes, religious orders, royal courts, tribal marriages, which were arranged. These were all like the cumulative nature of our previous incarnations. And I feel like when a soul reaches its point of evolution where the vow must be broken, it produces an energetic withdrawal, but not necessarily hostility. Although it might conventionally be interpreted as hostility, it's really not. It's the dismantle of old contracts and refusing unconscious bonding. So the polarity, the feminine masculine polarity in the Akashic field is unresolved gender-based karmic trauma in the collective. So the betrayal by male authority, the abandonment after childbirth, the exploitation of feminine sexuality, being chosen, then discarded, veered, then punished. So when a soul incarnates with this high remembrance, it may subconsciously reject intimacy until safety, equality, and coherence are felt. So this is an avoidance, it's ancestral level discernment. So soul mastery phases don't prioritize coupling. So that's something that should be remembered. And usually we were often priestesses, healers, oracles, midwives, and seers. So these roles required autonomy, celibacy or selective union, and devotion to source rather than partnership. So romantic pursuit often feels distracting rather than nourishing. And the body responds by decreased attraction, increased need for solitude, intolerance for shallow bonding. So I would say the mismatch or soul age disparity is that many women experiencing this are older souls incarnating in a world where many men are younger souls, and the masculine evolution is lagging behind the feminine evolution. So I'm naturally drawn to depth, honesty, responsibility, and mutual growth. So I think for me, relationships are challenging, especially as a modern day woman, is because I'm conflated by these old structural beliefs. But at the same time, I desire a level of independence and autonomy that defeats this sort of illusionary, nourishing role. So the love through suffering trauma loop is ending along conscious collective lines. And I think a lot of women are realizing that martyrdom is not worth it, and neither is emotional labor contracts. So it requires sacrifice, in other words. So I think that these structures have collapsed. And right now it's really hard to spiritually align when the mismatch was created at the start of the race. So I think for a lot of men to avoid lagging behind spiritually, they need to actually understand that they need to worship, but also allow women to expand in more ways. But because of the old narratives and programming, a lot of men will refuse this role and label it simply as women being resistant and sort of hostile. People often ask whether I identify as a feminist, a question that carries with it an entire architecture of assumptions, provocations, and resistance. To answer it sincerely demands a confrontation not only with patriarchy, but with the very language through which resistance is understood. What feminism means depends on who is asking, and more importantly, who is presumed to be speaking. And still, despite our so-called progress, the narrator of the story remains stubbornly male. We as women have become exceptionally adept at navigating a system that was never designed with us in mind. We have learned the rules, manipulated the codes, and extracted whatever small gains we could, but the structure itself remains intact. The game has not changed. Our strategies have. What we are witnessing now is not a revolution, but a rupture, a mass awakening. In digital spaces, I've witnessed women dismantle with frightening precision the inherited myths of romance, reproduction, and service. Many now declare with clarity and conviction that they see no value in childbirth, domestic submission, or legal union with men. Their reasoning is not rooted in bitterness, but in a lucid understanding of historical patterns. We are not embittered, we are simply no longer anesthetized. This generation is hyperliterate in pain and in power. We no longer fear public execution for our defiance. We cannot be burnt, hung, or drowned for our beliefs. We have, in many ways, already died. The dreams we were fed have collapsed. The once intoxicating myths of love, deep, nourishing, reciprocal love, have become cautionary tales. Colorism and texturism conspired with patriarchy to simultaneously exalt and erase me. In my own home, I was pedestalized and pathologized, made into both prize and pariah. My body became a battleground, politicized, eroticized, commodified. I was told that respect was a man's birthright, not a virtue to be earned. That lie became a haunting refrain throughout my womanhood. Yet, I have known of the material benefits that come from a man's labor, but they come at the cost of silence, sanity, and sovereignty. I've watched generations of women before me, my mother, my grandmother, barter away their bodies and identities in exchange for survival. Their erasure was called duty, their subjugation renamed marriage. Today I stand in a different world, one in which women can choose, can yearn, can create. And yet the desire that most of us still secretly carry, the desire for love, unpossessive, unwavering, unthreatened by ego, remains elusive. I've seen what men are capable of, not only in personal relations, but in their omnipresence, in institutions, in history, in algorithms. Men now more than ever have unprecedented access to women's lives, digital harems curated through apps, likes, and DMs. The same internet that gave women voices also gave men the illusion of endless choice. But something has shifted. We as women possess a depth of information our foremothers could scarcely imagine. We have developed critical thinking, emotional intelligence, and a refusal to shrink. We are not ungrateful. We are unbound. And with that liberation has come loss. A mourning of illusion, a grieving of naivety. Though I am perceived through a lens of beauty, I have come to understand that being adorned is not the same as being seen. Each time I allow a man access to me, emotionally, physically, or spiritually, I weigh it against the centuries of erasure. Some may say this is merely cynicism. Others will call it bitterness, but I know it as truth. I still long for love. Perhaps that is my deepest rebellion. To want, knowing all that I now know. Is it biology? Is it the unresolved absence of my paternal affection? Or is it the last vestige of a woman's romantic hope refusing to die? We are the daughters of fractured homes, raised in the ruins of nuclear family fantasies. And yet, the structures we inherited of hypergamy, of submission, of domesticated love still cast long shadows over us. The modern man is different, but not always better. Many are more insecure, more performative, more entitled, because they know we know. Still, I do not renounce the possibility of connection. I simply insist that it be honest. We were taught to kneel before our fellow man. The only problem is that he must now earn his place, and we are no longer willing to give ourselves away just to keep him around. Respect must be earned, love must be mutual, and womanhood, our most sacred inheritance, must no longer be the site of quiet suffering, but rather of divine return. So these are just the thoughts that I've had lately. So if you have anything more to say, comment down below. I'm keen to hear what everyone has to say. So that's all for now. So take care. See you in the next video.